I hate AI. In particular, I hate the idea that we now think we can't do better. This is my universal prompt for ChatGPT. I can literally paste it in and ask it to create a brand new prompt for whatever I want to build. For example, if I say I need a TradeBot application, ChatGPT will shape the whole thing for me. You can see it has generated a really impressive prompt. Honestly, it looks better than anything I would have written myself. It even uses my own branding, Captain Flasky Boy. Although it seems I've been quietly demoted to a TradeBot, it also pulls in APIs like FinHub and AlphaVantage, even though I know ChatGPT can grab this info on its own. So now let's embrace our inner vibe coder and paste this whole thing back into ChatGPT. Then we can sit back and watch it try to steal my job. Honestly, this is the fun part. I get to see what it thinks I should be building, and I pretend I'm not slightly terrified by how fast it works. So again, it does a great job. It builds a clean Flask project structure and even invents a pretty slick Python project name. All of that with just a few clicks. What more could you ask for? It feels like having a tiny genius coder living in my laptop, and I'm just here nodding like, yeah, that works. At least that's what it looks like on the surface. But here's the first problem. To run this thing, you need an OpenAI API key. Not a major issue, but still a speed bump. So let's go ahead and generate a key real quick and see if this project actually comes to life. So at first glance, it looks pretty awesome. It even has a little CSS animated character with states like idle, thinking, celebrate, sad, and error. There's an API auth token and a big shiny button that says Ask Captain Flasky Boy. Everything looks perfect right up until the moment you actually try to use it. So what went wrong? I wanted to go on a rant about how AI might build a trading app, but it could never outperform what I make as a human. But honestly, ChatGPT failed before we even got that far. And it failed on the dumbest thing possible. It didn't have access to its own API docs, and it thought version 2.72 was some ancient relic from the past. So, just to be clear, version 2.72 is not ancient at all. As of November 10th, 2025, it is the latest version. After doom scrolling through the OpenAI Python GitHub page for way too long, and even reading Reddit posts tagged as funny for this exact problem, I finally gave up and wrote the sanity check myself. Alright, we have finally reached the last and most painful issue with the OpenAI API. Let's take a look at this error code. It hits me with an OpenAI rate limit error. Error code 429. The message basically says, you exceeded your current quota. Please check your plan and billing details. It even drops a link to the docs. How helpful. I figured I would scale everything back and just make a simple GPT sanity check module. But then I found out there is no free tier at all to access the API. Right off the bat, you have to pay, no trial, no breathing room. And while I was dealing with that, I got flooded with all these new models. GPT Nano, GPT-5, GPT, who even knows anymore? Since I refused to spend money yet, I ended up researching a Gemini version of what I wanted to build. It actually has a free tier, I think. You might be wondering why I ended up with 2 sanity test scripts. When I tried the Google Gen AI SDK, it failed with an error saying the model is overloaded. I figured it might be the SDK messing up, so I made a second sanity script that talks directly to the REST API, but that one failed too. After a few minutes of thinking, I figured, alright, the model is overloaded, no big deal. I'll just switch to a different one. Easy fix, right? At this point, I'm honestly impressed. Google has outdone themselves. Not only have they managed to revive Flash, they've created multiple versions of it. And maybe I'm just having a bad day, but every Gemini model I tried kept hitting me with a quota exceeded error. The only one that actually worked for me was the Gemini 2.5 Flash preview model. Let's take a look at the script and make sure it actually works. We start with the line that prints starting Gemini API sanity check. Then we set a simple user query that says, respond with the single word hello and nothing else. And when we run it, guess what? We get back just hello. Simple. Finally, something that works. Now that we know Gemini actually works, we can finally update the AI trade bot that ChatGPT built. Thankfully, we only need to update one Python module to switch everything over. And with that final code change in place, we can finally fire up our AI hybrid trade bot. Alright, time for the big moment. I'll type in the super secret auth token, drop in the ticker symbol for Tesla, and hit the button to ask Captain Flasky Boy if we should buy, hold, or sell. You can see it wasted no time. It jumped straight from the idle state into the thinking state, and after a few seconds, it produced a decision. Along with that, it gave us a clean and simple hold rating. Looks like the bot is playing it safe today. This is a pretty solid start, and the thing I really like is how clean the JSON structure is. Everything is neatly packaged. The stock snapshot comes back with clear keys and values, so you can understand the data at a glance. Then the decision block is also clean JSON. Action, confidence, position size, reason, and symbol. Structured data that even a sleep-deprived coder can read without crying. At this stage, you can type in any stock ticker you want and get a super simple evaluation back. Now that everything is actually working, we can start doing some evaluation. And what better way to judge this whole project than by comparing it to the original prompt written by ChatGPT? For my own sanity, let's focus on where ChatGPT really failed. The big issue was prompt line 3. It told us to use the GPT-5 API for stock decisions, but ChatGPT had no idea what its latest documentation even was. It kept writing legacy code, calling functions that no longer exist, and using syntax that hasn't worked in months. Every request was broken from the start because it built the whole thing on outdated info.
Oh, good. You used the robot kittens I made for you.
Anyone else noticed something strange? Anyway, on the topic of TradeBot beta, when you compare the bot I'm building to the one the AI threw together, the difference is pretty clear. Mine took longer, sure, but it's already miles ahead. As a part-time trader and coder, I actually understand what I'm trying to build. And honestly, I'd like to think my version has a little more soul, even if that soul is made of pixels and questionable decisions. That being said, do I think AI is bad? Do I hate it? Not at all. I'm literally using AI right now as my voice. For years, I wanted to be a content creator and build my own apps, but I never felt comfortable using my real voice. With how good text-to-speech has become, I can finally chase that dream and create the projects I've always wanted to make. Alright, let's talk Gemini. It fits into the project as another data source, not the main decision maker. Similar to FinHub or AlphaVantage, we can ask it targeted questions and use its responses as part of the overall evaluation. Its input becomes one more signal in the buy, sell, or hold decision, making the TradeBot more informed without relying on a single provider.
Oh boy, it's time for a coding montage.
Before I demo today's changes, I want to point out something strange I noticed. When I use Gemini in the browser and ask for the current price of Apple or Tesla, it gives me the right number instantly. But when I call the same model through the API or SDK, it returns a price from last year. And we can actually see this in the output. Gemini even explains itself. When I run the module self-test, it returns a price and clearly labels it as not in real time. It even adds that the number is an estimation based on historical data and its knowledge cutoff date, so it's not broken. It's just doing exactly what it was trained to do, which is guess from old information. Fortunately, Google already has a solution for this. It's called grounding, and it gives the Gemini model the ability to access the web. With Google Search grounding, the model can pull real-time information instead of guessing from its training data. It boosts accuracy, reduces hallucinations, and even provides citations so you know exactly where the information came from. This makes it much more useful for anything that needs live data. Alright, with all of that out of the way, let me show you the Gemini updates. Now that we understand how it works and how grounding fixes its blind spots, we can take a proper look at what I added to the TradeBot. If we open the Trade app and swap out YFinance for Gemini while keeping the data type set to price, we can test it right away. When we click Fetch, you should see the latest stock price for Apple come through using the grounding setup. That's right, a full week of research, headaches, trial and error, and learning everything the hard way, all for a change that is barely noticeable at first glance. Alright, we have reached the end of episode 5, so let's recap what actually happened. This episode started with me testing the AI-built TradeBot and discovering all the ways it fell apart. We learned that ChatGPT did not understand its own latest documentation, it wrote legacy code, and the API had no free tier, which shut the whole thing down before it even began. Then we turned to Gemini. At first it looked promising, until I realized the SDK model was returning stock prices from last year. That led me down a long path of research until I found out about grounding, which allows Gemini to access real-time data through Google Search. From there, I built a new Gemini module and a Gemini stock picker, and plugged them into the modular system I created in earlier episodes. Now, the TradeBot can use FinHub, YFinance, and Gemini as different providers. No single point of failure, and more reliable decisions overall. This whole episode showed that AI can be bad if you blindly trust it. If you are not willing to check its output or understand what it is producing, it will lead you straight into broken code, missing features, and false assumptions. AI can speed things up, but it cannot replace the work you still need to do as a developer. At the same time, using AI did help me move faster. It gave me ideas, it pushed me in new directions, and it sparked the same kind of creative energy you get when you sit in the office and bounce ideas off a colleague. I never would have added Gemini to my TradeBot if I had not tried to make the AI build a version for me. So the message is simple. AI can be helpful, but only when you stay in control. Use it as a tool, not a shortcut, and your project will always end up better because of it. If you liked this episode and want to support the TradeBot project, hit like and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in episode 6.